In this tutorial, we're going to create a text design with some other graphic elements that would be like a resort wear design or something you might design for an apparel line, or we'll be working with techniques you might want to use to create some nice effects on text for your clients when you're designing for them. And these types of design effects are great for upselling. And upselling is, if your client brings you some artwork and they say this is what we want, but you take it and you dress it up a little bit, and you take it and you say, I dressed it up for you a little bit, which one do you like better? I added some effects to this one. And 9 times out of 10 they're going to say we like that one better. They're also going to feel like you've gone the extra step for them, a little bit more customer service. It only takes a few minutes to do this. But if they opt for the second design, you say we can set these up for you, but there'll be another $1.50 or $2 a shirt. Well, if the order is $300, that's another $600 on the order. You're going to set the job up and print it anyway. Make the extra money. Even if you convert 4 out of 10, it turns into a lot more money in your business. And I cover upselling in other videos, but using these techniques works very good for upselling. Also, now at advancedtshirts.com, we have set up our download so that you can download the actual CorelDRAW files from the tutorials to work along. So you'll have the design assets and all the things that we're working with in the tutorial, so you can work along as opposed to just watching the video. And you can really pick up these techniques and how to use them, how to work with these tools in CorelDRAW, working along with the video, with the Corel file. And you'll find that in the download section of advancedtshirts.com. To get started here, we're going to go for a vintage look. So we'll start out with a vintage font. Here I've got a decorative vintage font, and this is actually Appleton regular normal, and you can find this, just do a Google search and you'll be able to find it. I'm going to select this with a left mouse click, start dragging, right click one time, you'll see the plus sign, duplicate that, come here to the scale handle and scale it up a little bit in size. I'll go over here to the color palette, and in the X I will click the X with a left click to remove the fill, and then a right click to change the outline to black so I can see what I'll be working with. Then I'm going to go to the contour tool. Over here to the drop shadow, the little black arrow in the right hand corner indicates there's a flyout here. I'll go to the flyout and come down to contour. And I can see the steps are set to 1. I'm going to want a 2-step contour, so I'll highlight that and then enter the number 2. I'm also going to bring this down a little bit because you can see it's set to 0.209. That's not really what I'm going to want. It's a little too tight. Now I can go ahead and pull down this way, and that'll make it smaller. I can also work with the arrows on my keyboard. If I put my cursor in the numerical entry box here and hit the up arrow, you'll see that I'll start going up, and I can go down. And you'll find that across many of the tools in CorelDRAW. I'm going to bring that up to right about, I think right there will be just fine. Now I'm going to go back to the pick tool, come here to the contour tool, right click and select break apart, or I can just hit Control K on my keyboard. You'll see that the contour property bar will disappear. I'll now have the multiple objects property bar. Now I want to ungroup this, so I'm going to come down here, right click and ungroup this, or I could go and just hit Control U. I'm going to ungroup that so that all of these objects are ungrouped. I'll fill my text with a white color, and I'll fill my my first contour step with a gray color, just so I can see what's going on here. Now the next step is going to be a tail-like object for this design. I'm going to go over here to the freehand tool. You can see the little arrow down the corner, left click, hold down and go to the pen tool. I'm going to zoom in here, pushing forward on my center mouse wheel. I'm going to want to be right about here where the first contour line actually ends, and right there inside between that and the second contour line. I'll zoom out and I'm going to bring this up here. I want this to go through right through there also. Go there, drop a node here, pull down into right about there. Then I'll zoom in, pushing forward on the center mouse wheel, and just go through here because I'm going to use the second contour line to trim the tail object. And that's been completed. So now I have my tail object Nothing seems to be touching it, and that will work just fine. You want to pay attention, maybe this could be touching it or something here that would also trim it. It's actually touching just a little bit here. So I'll go to my shape tool and I'll move this down just a little bit right there. Now with that selected, I'm going to go back to my pick tool, hold down shift. I know that the tail object is on top of the second contour. I'm going to use the second contour to trim the tail object. So I'll hold down shift, select the second contour, come here and click on back minus front, but that's not what I want. I want front minus back. And you can see that trimmed the tail to the exact same dimensions as the first contour. Then I'm going to want to set up my tail to be welded into the first contour. To do that, I'll go to the pen tool again, just come here, lay down a node, pull that out a little bit, and curve that into like right about there. I'll left click on my center mouse wheel, zoom in, and I can just come through here up into right about there, and then I'll start bringing another curve down this way to tie into the tail object. And move out here a little bit. This doesn't have to be perfect. We'll clean it up after we do the welding. Just like that. I'll go back to my pick tool, hold down shift with that selected, select the first contour I created and the tail. I have 3 objects selected. Come up to the multiple object properties bar and click on weld. Now those 3 objects have become one object. I can fill those with gray again. Now this has come to the front of the page because I had the tail selected last. And when you weld, it's going to weld to the last object that's selected. So I want to send this to the back of the page. Right click, come down here to order, to back of page, and we can see that. I'm going to go to the shape tool, push forward on my center mouse wheel, zoom in, delete this. I'm going to lay a node down here to stabilize this line segment before I do some deleting here on this curve. Drop another node there, select those, hit the delete key. They're cleaned up. Now, had I not done that, and I still had this object, this node was not here, you're going to see what would have happened. I'll double click on these and it would have had a traumatic effect. So very often when you're working with nodes and line segments and you want to protect a line segment, you just drop a node there. Double click here, then select these 2 and I'll double click to delete them, and now everything's nice and smooth and clean. I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to stabilize this line segment, select these 2, double click to delete them. I'll delete this, and I'll delete this, and we've got a nice smooth shape here. Coming up here, I'm going to lay down 2 nodes here just so that it's smooth better when I delete them. Come up here, and I'll just grab this control arm for that node, pull that up to smooth that out, and now my tail is all set in my design, and we can see that that first contour now has a tail attached to it. So we've got a foundation for our design. The next step is going to be to create another contour around the first contour object that we welded the tail to. So go back to the contour tool, set this back to 1, and then I'll come down here with that and left click, hold down, and start to pull out, and then release, and we can see that we've got our second contour segment. We'll go back to the pick tool, and I can increase that in size if I want to. I really don't want this through here so much, so I might make that a little bit bigger. I'll go with my cursor here, just hit the up arrow, and that went way too far, so I want to go back with that. Hit the back arrow again. You can see it's going back very slowly. It took a big jump there in the first one, but I'm going to go back, and it looks like it's not going to clean up that line segment, so I'm going to stop right here. I think, well, maybe just a little bit thinner. Hit the not back arrow, but the down arrow one more time. And that looks good right there. Then I'll select this. Now I can right click, or I can hit Control K to break that apart. Then I'll come down here to this area with my shape tool, and I'll just select these nodes, holding down shift, lassoing them. Left click, hold down lasso. And I think I got a node there and I don't want that node, so I'll just select this, hold down shift, select that, and that. And I'll hold down Control now to make sure I get all 4 of these. And then I'll just double click to delete them. And there, now that's nice and straight. So there is our third contour going to the outside, and we can see we're really starting to get to where we want to be with this design and setting up this text design. And all the steps are right in here for you to follow along. Now, with all of this done and set up for me, the next thing I want to do is start adding my color. So I'm going to go with a black here where I have the tail, and I'm going to take the outline off of that. And then where we have the green from the contour, I'm going to go with a red there, take the outline off of that. And then where we have the text, I want a kind of a cream color or a light tan. So I'll come down here, I'll go to my color palette. If you're hovering over the color palette, you can pull back on your center mouse wheel to scroll down through your colors. Come down to here, something like the sand color, and fill that, and we can see how our colors are working now. Now that that's set up, the next thing I want to do is start adding textures. But before that, I'm going to take the contour that I made around everything, and I'm just going to duplicate that. I'm just going to left click, right click one time, hold down, duplicate that to make a solid drop shadow. Release that. I'll scroll back up in my color palette, pushing forward, center mouse, and then I'll come here and left click in the black, fill that with a black, right click, order, and then to back of page. And now that's set up also. So I've got the drop shadow. You can go in here and move this around and see how it looks as having more or less of that, and just dialing in right where you'd like it to be. It just makes a nice little effect there. Then the next thing is going to be adding textures to the design. So I want to take the text, and I'm going to come up here and right click in the color palette on the X to remove the outline on that. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to fill that with white. Then I'm going to paste that back in so that I've got white behind my texture effect. The next thing I'm going to do is go to my advanced tools. I'll be using the Fashion Factory here. Over 2,500 textures and bitmap fills, all high resolution. So bring up the Fashion Factory and we'll take a look at what we want to apply to this. Now, since I'm working with a vintage design, probably want to add a vintage effect to the text. Now, if I go here to textures, I have system textures and bitmap fills. Bitmap fills are full color, and they'd have to be color separated. System textures can be applied to vectors and separate very easily as far as color separations are concerned. There's thousands of them in here. They're all high resolution and seamless. Many different categories. You can create any type of effect you could possibly think of. Come down here to the vintage, and I'll browse through here to lines, and lines start right here. So I'll go with the vintage lines 10. And I've got that brought up here, and I'm just going to click on apply texture as transparency, and that'll be applied. Now we can see that effect. We can see the lines now where there's transparency in the vector object and in the color of the vector object. If I zoom in, you can see that. The interesting thing, or the excellent thing about working with the transparencies from the bitmaps as textures in CorelDRAW is you can dial them in to any look you'd like them to have. So I can go to my transparency tool in the toolbox, left click on that, I'll scroll up and you can see this box. I can rotate, left click and rotate the texture effect. I can scale it. Left click, hold down, move in. Lines are going to get smaller or more narrow in width. Left click, pull that out, they're going to get bigger. So I'll bring this right in here. You can also skew and do many different things to dial in your effects working with the bitmap transparencies coming from the textures we have in the Fashion Factory. We'll go back to the pick tool. Now if I want to increase the intensity of the color, I can copy the vector object with a texture and then paste it back in. You can see that got a little bit darker. I'm going to delete that because I kind of like the way things are set up here now. Now the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to go to my Smart Fill tool and fill these two areas, because I'm going to create an overlay for all of this. So I'll go here to the Smart Fill tool in the toolbox. I'll push forward to zoom in. I'm going to click here and here. Once that's done, I'm going to go back to the pick tool. I'm going to left click and select everything. Come up here to create boundary. Now with my boundary created, I'm going to hold down shift and just lasso through here and get those two Smart Fill objects that I created. Come up here and click on combine. Now this is one color and it's all black, and this is now going to be an overlay for yet another texture effect. So I'll go back to the Fashion Factory and I'm going to go to, let's say, go to cracks. I'll take a look at that and I'll just go through there, see if there's anything I want in there. And I don't, maybe I'll go to I think there's some good cracks in the halftones. I'll go to halftones and just go through there. Take a look at some different effects here, at what I'd like. And you can browse through a lot of different things. And I'm going to go to grunge, and we'll go through grunge and see what we've got here to work with. Coming through here, looking at different grunge textures. And you can see how many different ones there are for so many different effects. And I'm going to come back through here and I'm just browsing to see what I'd like to work with. And I'll take a look at this. What's this? This is cracked earth. And before that, this is a nice crack wash. And I'll go with that. I'll go ahead and apply texture as transparency. And then I'll apply that to that bitmap. And then I'll minimize that. And then I'll fill that with a white. So I get that nice texture effect. Then I'll go back to the transparency tool, scroll up, and I'll change the size of that. And you can see the effect that I'm getting. Now if I want to strengthen that once again, go back to the pick tool, go to copy, go to paste, and then it'll be a little bit stronger. And now I've got that effect built in there. Now the interesting thing is when you've got them copied and pasted on top of each other, you can go back to your transparency tool again and then make adjustments on the texture that's on top of the other texture to add more and really dial in and tweak what you want to happen with your texture effects in your designs. And here we're working with the overlay. So at this point I've got everything set up for the text part of the design. I'll zoom out and I'm going to come over here and bring this over to my t-shirt. And then I'm going to duplicate my t-shirt mock-up. Left click, hold down, right click one time. Make that quite a bit bigger. And then we'll right click and we'll go to order and to back of page. And we'll make this a little bit bigger over this way here. Now the street gear part of the design is all set up. I'll grab my additional assets, which would be the New York City and the city line, and I can bring those up into my design. Hold down shift here, and I don't have shift, I have the caps lock, and we'll bring those here. I bring my city element up here, and I'm just gonna bring that down and skew that into my design. Right click, order, I'll go in front of you, can't see that, and click on the shirt, bring it into like right about there. Got my New York City text. Now this already has the texture in it, but I'll bring this right here to the bottom and enlarge that. And all of this is in the file so that you can work with it. I grabbed the shirt there by accident. I'll hit Control Z and bring that up, and we'll line that up, make sure that's the correct line up there. Now the other thing I do is select my object, which is my city line here, go to Effects, Copy Effect. Let's say I want the same texture, Lens From, and then click on that overlay, and I'll get that same texture. Now, it doesn't look very good there. I'm going to have to go to the Texture tool and change my foreground transparency to 0 and my background transparency to 100. Now the effect looks correct. So we've gone through all the steps. Now if I want to add an outline to the New York City, I can do that, and I can just start to dress up the design and change things, add things to it. I might come here to the city skyline that I've got there, left click, hold down right click one time, duplicate that, change that to say a white, then right click on that, order, go to in front of and click on the shirt, and we can see that effect. I might want to zoom in, make that a little bit smaller of an effect like you can see right there, and then change the color of that. And we'll come over here and we'll make that a little bit darker than the shirt, something like that, kind of offset. The same with the New York City text. And if I wanted to add, this already has the texture to it from the actual graphic, but I could just once again copy the texture into that. So I'd say I've got the look that I want here, working with the contour tool to create the outlines and the tail, adding the textures and the vintage lines into the text, and setting everything up in CorelDRAW. I really do like working with the bitmap transparencies. You saw the way you can dial those in, and having all those textures at my fingertips when I'm doing my design work. And I would say that this is pretty much ready to go. You could go in and dial this in any way you want. Once again, you can download the file for free on our website at advancedtshirts.com and work along with the tutorial. The textures from the original design are actually in that, so you'll be able to work with the textures also, at least the two that are incorporated into the design. We'll go ahead and wrap here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.